Brandon Sanderson has heavily criticized Wheel of Time Season 2 finale. He's asking, what are the arcs? What is the theme? Basically, what is the purpose of this show? Let's get into this here. Brandon Sanderson, who finished the Wheel of Time books for Robert Jordan following his death and serves as a consultant on the Prime Video show, provided some harsh criticism for the show after watching the Season 2 finale. Sanderson appeared on the Dusty Wheel live stream to watch the Season 2 finale live. Before watching the finale, Sanderson did admit, this time I read episode 8 and was able to give feedback on it. I didn't get to do that last time because 7 and 8 had to film. They did it very rushed and they didn't send them to me. So he's admitting here that he's actually read the script, he provided feedback on the script, and he gave that to them. As the live watch and react began, he also started, I should mention that I haven't seen the whole season. I've read all the scripts. I have not seen the whole season. This is the first chance I've been able to sit down and watch. So he hasn't seen all of Wheel of Time Season 2, and who can really blame him? Why would you want to watch the rest of Season 2? Why would you want to watch any of Season 2 after watching even some of the episodes of Season 1? I know I certainly did not watch any of Season 2 after watching, I think, what it was like 4 or 5 episodes of Season 1, and I never finished it because it was just so atrocious. So I don't blame him for not actually watching any of the show, but he's also been very busy. He's got like a lot of books that he's writing and stuff like that. As their viewing of the finale continued, though, Sanderson interjected at one point, the show is doing a lot of things fantastically, and it's really good at scenes. But one of the things I keep arguing for is, what are the arcs? What is the theme? And arc and theme seems to fall by the wayside for cool scenes quite a bit, and that worries me, particularly going into book 4, where it's the strongest Wheel of Time book, and that's partially because of the themes of self-sacrifice and things like this. He would eventually kind of basically reiterate that point and elaborate on it extensively following the actual watching of the episode. They kind of did a little bit of a mini breakdown after that. And so after watching the entire episode and commenting along the way, Sanderson would share more of his thoughts. He said, what I remember writing to them is like, if you can earn this, this will be a lot of the problems with this episode are actually previous episodes, and that the scenes are all good. A lot of them are good, but what you're having happen doesn't feel built to character-wise for a lot of the characters for me. And that might be me too clouded by the books. It's totally possible. I don't think so. If there's anything we've seen from modern Hollywood storytelling, we clearly saw this in the Ahsoka stuff. We see this in all the Star Wars stuff, is that you get these interesting concepts and interesting scenes, but they never build up to them. It doesn't work, and he's kind of saying the same thing is happening in the Wheel of Time Season 2, where there are maybe some kind of cool, interesting scenes, but there's no real build up to them that lets you make them even have that like greater impact than, oh, it's just a cool scene. So as he continued to provide commentary, he said Season 2, like the scripts even, and I haven't seen all of Season 2, just they're doing a really good job with a lot of things, and it's a step up from Season 1, and this ending is a step up from Season 1. So he does admit that this is better than Season 1, the scripts were better than Season 1, and that the Season 2 finale that he actually did watch is better than the Season 1 finale. But he would circle back to his criticisms of the show not earning its moments. He said, I know people are going to dislike this. Instead of that half hour, we get Moraine and her family drama. It's their strongest actor doing good drama pieces, right? But the problem is the cost is this, because you have these scenes, then you can't do this justice. And so either the whole show should lean into the Moraine drama stuff, or all it's doing is preventing you from having the time to set up Perrin's arc and even Egwene's arc. So he's literally talking about they inserted things because they have a really good actress playing Moraine, and they wanted to focus on that and have her do that, but it doesn't serve the story well. So and it takes away from the buildup that you would have actually almost gotten that. You'd have gotten the promise. They would have delivered on the promise of that buildup, but you don't even really get the buildup. So when they deliver the promise, it doesn't really work because you didn't have the buildup to earn it, right? So he goes on and says, like Egwene has the strongest arc, Egwene does so much in this season, and nobody else gets to do anything. Rand gets to stab Elon, but what does that mean? Like earlier, he wasn't even using the sword. What does the sword mean to him? He doesn't draw it to fight the Blade Master, but he draws it to fight the Forsaken. Why? That's actually really interesting. He talks about that a lot. I didn't include a lot of it here in this article, where he's just like, why? He just is always kind of like asking, like, why do they do this? It doesn't really make sense. They're breaking their internal logic. And I do have some of that in here, which we'll get to a little bit here. He then elaborated on his criticism, saying, I still think my complaints stand even if you're not a book reader, in that it's spectacle, whereas I want media, where character arcs mesh with thematic arcs, mesh with physical arcs. And when Rand stabs Elon, it's not just a cool scene. It is a cool scene that is the culmination of his character arc and of the themes that the media has presented. And I think his explanation of that is just absolutely on point. As far as like Hollywood in general, like they don't do any of this stuff anymore. And he actually provides an example of one of the best movies to ever do this, the best pieces of media to do this. And he says it's Star Wars. He says, I want an ending like when Luke blows up the Death Star. The theme being trust in the Force and those who love you will be with you regardless. And yes, it's a very simple theme for Star Wars, but they hit it. They show he can't do it, then later on he can. He trusts in Obi-Wan, and it's kind of trusting in your forefathers and things like this. And I want moments like that, and I want to be able to look at when this happens and say that's what this means. And I think 100% on point. This is what a lot of people, like, they don't understand, like, the deep themes and meanings is what really is why people love a lot of these stories so much, why people love Lord of the Rings, why people love Star Wars, why people love Wheel of Time, is because you do have these deeper themes and meanings. And a lot of what Hollywood does is it erases all of that stuff, in my opinion, because they want to get rid of a lot of those themes. They don't like them. They want to subvert them. They want to destroy them. And then they just want you to, like, tease you with, like, the flash of the action scenes and all this stuff and hope that you'll just buy it. And that's why a lot of us are just left like, what in the world did I just watch? You don't take away anything from it anymore. It was just basically a waste of your hour, 45 minutes, or whatever it was, and you don't even go back to it. It's just something you consume. It's like you eat the burger, you move on. It's not like something that you, like, cherish, you bring out, you share with people, you pass it down, right? Sanderson then heavily criticized the episode. He said, if Perrin hadn't been there and Matt hadn't been there, how would it be different? If Elaine hadn't been there, how would it be different? They needed Egwene. But if Matt hadn't been there, he doesn't get wounded. If Matt hadn't been there, then they don't need Elaine to heal him. Nineveh didn't do anything. Perrin has a shield. What does that even do? So really what's happening there is that Rand needs Egwene to do all the work and stab a guy. Rand didn't need to be there. Egwene just needed a sword. So he's just absolutely, like, savaging them right here. He's just like, what was the entire purpose of all this stuff? It doesn't make any sense. It's just complete nonsense. Despite his tough criticism, he did try. He understands that he's providing this tough criticism, and I feel like he's in a tough situation because he is a consultant. So he does have to, like, kind of, like, bring it back and, like, talk about how, like, they did do some good things. And this is kind of one of the points where he does that. He says, "Let me say, these things are really hard. What else is really hard is finding good casting and directing it well. And they cast and directed really well. And I don't want to downplay how good the stuff that's good in this episode was good." How good the stuff that's good in this episode was good, yeah. But it still bothers me that so many of the characters didn't have to be there, and so much of it doesn't seem to mean anything. Exactly. Like, there's no meaning. Like, the Wheel of Time has meaning. Like, that book series has a lot of meaning in it, and they've pretty much just taken it away, and Brandon Sanderson is making that point here, too, with the second season. Still later, Sanderson asserted, I want to love it. I like it. The issue is I think people are going to enjoy watching this, but I don't think they'll come back to it because what brings you back are those moments where things culminate. You don't come back for cool scenes because you can get cool scenes over and over again. I will say, I will push back on that a little bit. I do think people will come back for cool scenes, but they won't come back to your show. It'll just be the cool scenes posted as, like, memes on social media or things like that, where you just like it as the cool scene meme. But again, it's like you liked it for like 20 seconds and then you're moved on and you don't even remember it or think about it ever again at that day or until you see the meme again. That's kind of like that's the only thing I push back. But I think his overall argument he's making here, I totally agree with him on. But he goes on and says, for me, I love a good character arc, and if I know a character's arc ending is weak, I can't enjoy the middle, if that makes sense. So maybe that's coloring my perspective. And I know this is a me thing that is not necessarily as tied to a lot of viewers' enjoyment of narrative. I need setup and payoff for me to really, truly love something. And if I don't get that, then it's going to be really hard for me. I actually don't think that I don't think he's out of the ordinary here. Tolkien talks about this a lot on fairy stories. This is something that I think is part of our human nature, is that we do want this stuff when we're looking at stories and things like that. We do gravitate toward the stories that are more true, that do have these kind of narrative structures that align towards the truth. So I think I think Sanderson is onto something there. I don't think he's out of the ordinary here. Tolkien talks about this at length in on his On Fairy Stories essay. And I also think this is why we see so many people noping out of Star Wars, is because they have ruined the character of Luke Skywalker. Yes, those original trilogy is still there, but since they added on an extra ending, that's now the middle of the story. And yes, indeed, that does harm that original trilogy. And I think Sanderson is kind of tapping into something there as well, looking at comparing that to Star Wars. He then also expressed that he's worried the show will quickly begin contradicting their new rules they have created. We've seen this over and over and over again. We've seen this with Star Wars. We're seeing this with Marvel. You see this with DC. And clearly he's afraid of this happening in Wheel of Time. And he says it's already happening. He says, I've warned them about that, and they're already doing it with channeling. There's things they'll say one time it has to be a certain way, and then another time it isn't. I warned them about that with teleportation. You can do this because the Forsaken would totally be able to do this. Once you do it, I'm going to start asking. And in the scripts, I pointed out 3 places where I'm like, if they could teleport, if Elon can teleport, why isn't he behind the shield the moment she throws it up? Excuse me. He's talking about a scene here where Elaine puts up a shield basically to stop Elon's attack. And then he goes on and said, the moment you start breaking Jim's metaphysics, he's talking about Robert Jordan there, his real name, Jim. And then suddenly you have some big problem at every step of the way, and this is their own internal logic. Why didn't he teleport behind her? So he's questioning their own internal logic. Again, this is something that Tolkien talks about on Fairy Stories. When you begin questioning the internal logic, the internal rules, you are no longer actually immersed into the fiction. You are now looking at it from an outside perspective, and you see it as he talks about it as like an aborted project, and you're looking at it from that point of view now, rather than being actually immersed and believing that that world can indeed exist with the rules that it has set up. So he's making that point clear there. So that is basically the gist of Brandon Sanderson's criticism of Wheel of Time Season 2. You can obviously check it out on the Dusty Wheel, the whole interview, the show and everything, because he does provide commentary throughout it, and then he obviously goes into significant details, and there's some back and forth with some of the other co-hosts on the show too, where he's kind of like talking about like, hey, this doesn't really make sense and stuff like that. So but I do find his commentary and criticism very interesting, because I feel like it is a lot of how we criticize a lot of these other properties, and how we were criticizing the Wheel of Time Season 1, and it just looks like a lot more of the same. He does say it has improved, but they clearly still haven't got to the underlying root of those like character arcs and those thematic arcs, which are truly important to a lot of these stories. And when you ignore those, you really don't have anything meaningful, which Sanderson points out here. But let me know what you think about Brandon Sanderson's criticism of the Wheel of Time Season 2.
Subscribe for more.